I'm curious. You seem to apologize for your opinion sometimes. Do you worry about getting canceled?
No, no. But I do think so. That's an interesting point. I don't necessarily apologize for my opinions. I do say sorry because I think there's an idea where if you're confident, you don't have to say sorry. But I never thought that I had to get into a power play with myself if I had the power over myself, not power over others, but power over myself. Right. So I think there's an idea where someone's like, well, I'm unapologetic about my opinion. I'm very confident. I'm very convicted in this. And if someone doesn't agree, screw them. Right. Which I think sometimes obscures your message. So I don't try to apologize for it, even though I use the word sorry. I try to make it more palatable because I do want it to reach people. Like, here's a good example. If I were to talk about spirituality, if I were to talk about religion, or talk about how I pray, that would just by default cancel out like, I don't know, 20, 30%, or like however many, right? Of people are like, well, that doesn't apply to me, so I'm not listening. All right. But I think if I'm going to take the few seconds or few minutes or a few hours, as you know, I can give very lengthy answers to answer, then I might as well, if I'm doing it with the intention to help someone, might as well frame it in a way that can help the most people. Right. And there are ways outside of their box that would help. So if I would say, I pray and here are the benefits of prayer, and it doesn't cost me that much to add on. And if you want to think of it in a secular way, if you don't want to be um, religious, then you can think of it as meditation, right? And like can offer at least similar benefit to that. I would say there is difference, and I think sometimes it is not necessarily the fear of, oh no, so like no one's going to cancel me for what was the thing I just said. Oh, PhD level stuff. I don't
Yeah.
think like that's not a risk of being canceled, right? It's not it's not like a reel of someone using racial slurs for like 5 minutes. That's really more so to save some pointless discussion, right? That's not the point. The point is to compare it to this instead. Um, I think for most people, like who I think and this is also something I've been thinking about for a while too. The fear and the risk of being canceled for a lot of content creators or public figures is not as great as it may seem to someone in the audience, right? There are some people like in Discord, everyone's like, oh, well, I'm just going to cancel this person. And they're going to be crying. So I know some of these content creators they're talking about, and like the times they've been canceled or there was some negative response to their words, it it didn't affect them nearly as much as the audience people think. I was like, oh, this person has lost millions in sponsorships. It really hasn't. Like their top line revenue stayed the same, their views stayed the same. But I think for some people, the fear of that is really more so. Let's say you're a gaming creator, right? And you're a good one. You're here to bring joy to people. And you work like 10, 20 hours to make like a 10-minute video that people enjoy, right? And you're doing, you're like, oh, it's going to be funny. It's going to be inspiring. It's going to have like good morals. It's great. And then someone's like, well, I don't like this game you played. Whereas like, I think this character is like a racial caricature. And you didn't even think of that.
Hmm.
If you are someone who is there to help and you're someone who is there to bring joy and you just spent 20, 30 hours like grinding away, losing sleep on this, and you're like, whew, the reason you tend to apologize is because you're there to bring joy. You're not there to create controversy,
Right.
right? Some people are in politics, they're there to create controversy. That's okay. But this person there isn't necessarily there to create controversy. That's why there's more of like, hey, I'm sorry about this. We'll delete it because like you don't want to spend so much time working to ruin someone's day, even though you could argue it's that person's fault for letting it
Mm.
ruin their day, right? But they don't want that. So I think sometimes, with some exception, obviously right now there are some people with like unfortunately sexual allegations, some very serious things, but the standard risk of being canceled, we tend to see the biggest cases as an audience. And I'm like, just us, like in general, the ones that make like headline news are the really, really, really bad ones. In
Mm.
general, having an opinion people disagree with is not going to get you canceled. I just try to make mine more palatable to other people. But I'm also a long-winded person, right? If you ever see me write like Instagram posts, like the what is it called? The description, not
The,
commentary.
the caption?
Is it description? Yeah, the caption. Right. For me, the caption doesn't even apply because it's like sometimes it's an essay. I max it out. It's like, oh no, like you run the character limit. I'm like, oh man, but I want to add more. But and it's funny. It's like a 20-second video, right? That I have
Mm.
put more words in the caption than I actually used in the video, right? But I want to give context to it. So that is just like a idiosyncrasy of Hampton.
Mm. I spoke to Jack O'Shea, who's a TikToker who does pretty offensive, I suppose, sketch comedy videos,
Okay.
and about cancel culture as well. And it seems like we spoke about, or he felt like cancel culture wasn't real as long as you hadn't actually done something wrong. Because you
Hmm.
choose when you're canceled. If you stop making content because people are hating on you, then you're canceled. But if you don't stop making content and you continue to make content for those who actually keep enjoying it, then you're not canceled. You can't be canceled.
I think there's a point to that, and I've heard I didn't hear the actual clip, but I've heard Logan Paul make that claim too, which I totally I get. I understand that, but I think there's also you could also find it's a different interpretation than if you're banned off all social media platforms,
Right, of course. Yeah.
right? Which, to be fair, relatively few people have, right? And now I don't know Jack O'Shea. I don't mean that as like a good or bad way. He might make stuff that I like. I like some.
He's cool.
There are some comedians I follow with some pretty dark comedy. I'm like, that's funny. I
Yeah.
would never say that, but that was pretty funny, right? I he might not unless he's really pushing the edge of that. He might not be at the risk of like truly being like deleted off all social media platforms. And I think there is a value to that. And I kind of want to analyze and push back and play and advocate against myself in this case, where we often talk about cancel culture in a negative light. But I think if we empathize with the people who might not be the most fanatic about it, but who might choose not to watch someone because of something they said, I think they feel like it is their way of balancing out the power that they view that content creators and influencers and these figures have, right?
Mm.
I think we have a natural tendency to want to be like, well, them, like kind of like democratic, to where it's like we choose where we want, regardless of where you live. I know not everywhere in the world is democracy, but I think there's a natural spirit in the world where we want to choose the people we listen to and the people that reign over us. And if you're a content creator of like 200,000 YouTube subscribers, you kind of feel like, I'm not reigning. Hopefully, you don't feel like you're reigning over anyone. But to them, it might feel that way, right? To them, it might feel like that this is a large person and they're saying whatever they want. They have the power. I wish we could do something. And whether or not that's justified, I think that is where some people are coming from, where they feel like, well, this is being forced on us, and like I want to have the ability to choose not to do this. So I think in its most innocuous form, not innocuous, but in the most pure form, it is a way of social pushback where someone, imagine if you were canceled and nobody made a single bad post, nobody made a single bad comment or review on it. It just chose to stop using your service,
Mm.
right? That like, would that be a little bit more palatable? So yeah, I think while there is a negative connotation to it, and while in some cases I really do think it's almost childish and immature, a lot of the cancel culture, I think there does exist a form of it where it might be a little bit valid. And I
Mm.
think I don't necessarily want to be someone who is like la 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 la, la, this is stupid, that I don't want to listen to you at all, because you might have a point,
Mm.
right? Now,
Yeah.
some people, the way they try to cancel you, whether they say it or not, like it's like a child throwing a temper tantrum. When it's like literally it's someone's opinion that you disagree with, and you're just like,
Mm.
so it's like, talk about like me like saying something not palatable to someone. That's how it seems, okay? Because like I can tolerate it, but sometimes I have a content creator friend who's going through it. I'm like, I don't want to say this about my audience, but these are children.
Yeah.
These are children. They're such a baby, right? And so there is that. But I also try to find some truth in it and see if I can use it to improve.